The first season of The Clone Wars aired in October of 2008. I never watched it. I knew of its existence, of course. As a lifelong Star Wars fan, I knew of a Star Wars animated series being made. In 2008, I was 22 years old, not a fan of the prequels, not really a fan of the prequel era in general, started dating my now wife, and just all around busy at my first duty station in the Navy, so I didn't really have a desire to watch the show for a number of factors. I think my mindset back then was very similar to a lot of people's mindset now about Star Wars Resistance. Animated show? Kiddie stuff. And while that is without a doubt true, the animated shows are geared towards a certain age demographic. When I started to watch The Clone Wars a year ago, I realized that it was A, way better than I was expecting, and B, offered a lot of context and meaning to an era of Star Wars that I was never really that into or interested in. So maybe you were like me, maybe you were and still are apprehensive and completely uninterested in watching the show. I never had any hate or anger or over-the-top hyperbolic resentment for the Clone Wars. My thought was always just, I'm glad it exists, but it just doesn't seem like it's for me. And just about a year ago, I decided to watch it. And I really only gave it a chance because a few viewers during my live streams were encouraging me to give it a chance. I'm always up for watching something or playing something that I originally wasn't that interested in, because you never know, you might like it. The Clone Wars has a lot of hits and a lot of misses. There are some episodes and arcs that feel like a chore to get through, there's no doubt about that. But there are a ton of arcs that will broaden your idea of what Star Wars is, broaden your idea of what the Force is, which could be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on your takeaway, of course. I won't say that the Clone Wars made me like the prequel films more, but they did make me appreciate them a little bit more, I'd say. Not necessarily as movies, but more for the world building. And I think that's one of the Clone Wars' biggest strengths, the world building. Giving context to things that we saw in the films, fleshing out characters that felt flat and two-dimensional in the movies, and that's not very surprising, right? The show spends a hell of a lot more time with these characters than the movies, so it only makes sense we get to know them more. It's not really a strength, it's just a plus. One of the biggest things I've enjoyed about the Clone Wars so far is diving into and understanding the struggle between the Galactic Republic and the Separatists. Maybe it's just me, but I always felt like the explanations for what was actually happening in the prequels were convoluted and confusing in the prequels themselves, but the Clone Wars definitely lays it out and makes it way easier to understand, simplifies it. Secession, Confederacy, Republic, it's actually a pretty interesting story and concept. One that the Clone Wars show explained far better than the films did. That is one of the biggest reasons to watch the Clone Wars, I think. Context where context was lacking. Some of my favorite episodes and arcs in the show focus on the clone troopers themselves, which might sound strange if you've never seen the show, but they've done such a good job humanizing clones, giving clones their own individuality, quirks, personalities. It's something I never expected going into the show. I honestly just thought the show was going to be about like Anakin, Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, and then throw in some prequel villains, but no. While there is some of that, there's also a real focus on the clones. We see them training, we see them fighting, bickering, and acting like soldiers. It's great. It's way better than I was expecting. My only complaint about that is I wish there were more arcs that solely focus on the troopers. Maybe there will be, I don't know, I'm only halfway through the show right now, but what I've seen I've really enjoyed. One of the new characters introduced in the show is Ahsoka, who's Anakin's Padawan. She starts off as a kid. We see her evolve. We see her training, missions she takes. You know, when she first popped up on the show, I was a little worried. I thought things were gonna get pretty kiddie. She was an immature kid, but her evolution is fun to watch. She becomes a steadfast leader. She grows up, and you see her learn from Anakin tactics and strategy. Sometimes they're not the right tactics and strategy. They're out of the ordinary. But it's a lot of fun to see her go from kid to headstrong. She's without a doubt one of the better aspects of the show. And as we know, the Clone Wars is back. A new season is being made. A final season, as far as I know, I think it's the final season. It would absolutely be worth diving into the show right now, watching it in its entirety and preparing for the next season. Each episode is like 22 minutes long. They're on Netflix. They're really easy to binge, and they're fun. Again, there are a lot of wishy-washy, not so good episodes and arcs that will probably make you just want to turn off the TV and go, I'm done. But when one is good, when an arc and an episode is good, it's really good. Just give it a shot. I have to say, it has broadened my view of what Star Wars is. and what Star Wars means to people. My Star Wars has always been the original trilogy, right? When I think of Star Wars, I think of the OT. And for a lot of younger folks, when they think of Star Wars, they think of the Clone Wars. And to me, that's pretty cool. I like that. I've been saying it for a long time now, but Star Wars is a generational thing. Your favorite Star Wars is probably the Star Wars you watched when you were 10 years old. What we grew up with tends to be our favorite. And then the older generation doesn't seem to like the new stuff. And then when you get a little bit older, you kind of start accepting the new stuff. It just seems like a cyclical thing with Star Wars, and it's becoming more apparent every day. So, experience someone else's favorite Star Wars and give it a shot. HelloGreedo, out.